Boleh tepuk tangannya untuk memulai pagi ini. Good morning ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Fairmont Hotel Ballroom, and welcome to the DBS Reshaping Cash Management event. Please give another big round of applause to start this morning event. Thank you so much. Perkenalkan, nama saya Tommy Cokro. Saya akan memandu acara hari ini. It's an honor for me, Tommy Cokro, to be your MC for today. So we have an exciting program prepared for you today that can reshape the way you perceive cash management. Kami memiliki program atau persembahan untuk Anda semua, untuk Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, khususnya untuk membentuk kembali dan mempertajam pengelolaan uang Bapak dan Ibu sekalian. But firstly, in this digital era transformation, we're all increasingly challenged to keep up with the new technology, new solutions, and new regulations to ensure our business remains competitive. But how might we keep up with this changing landscape? So now, ladies and gentlemen, to start answering those questions and to start this morning event, it's a pleasure for me to invite Mr. Iwan Rusli, Head of Global Transaction Services at DBS Indonesia, to deliver the opening address. Pak Iwan Rusli, the stage is yours.
Good morning. Good morning, selamat pagi Bapak-Bapak, Ibu-Ibu, tamu undangan yang saya hormati. A warm welcome to you all. Perkenankan saya untuk memberi kata sambutan dalam bahasa Inggris. Ladies and gentlemen, valued clients and colleagues, thank you for joining us this morning. Driving digital transformation is at the very heart of DBS and permeates through all we do. Treasury Prism is an example of our customer-centered focus and agility in product innovation and development. The needs of corporate treasurers and finance managers can no longer be satisfied by out-of-the-box banking products that do not reflect their distinct digital objectives. Instead, the co-creation of digital business propositions between companies and financial service providers, and most importantly of all, their clients, has become fundamental. As you have seen in the video, we are seeing massive digital transformation in the financial service industry driven by new technology such as blockchain and AI, artificial intelligence. New digital solutions such as application programming interface and platforms, new industry payments infrastructure such as SWIFT, GPI, and others. All these changes are causing a radical shake-up in corporate treasury and transaction banking. At the same time, with digitization now a key competitive driver, businesses around the world are increasingly investing in digital initiative to tap on new opportunities, create new income streams, redefine business models with the objective to accelerate growth or simply to survive. The internet and network connectivity enables the creation of online communities and collaborative platforms, which dramatically changes the way business connect and collaborate with their customers, suppliers, distributors, etc. DBS has worked with Zero, a cloud accounting platform using collaborative development activities such as hackathons to enable software providers to integrate DBS banking services directly into their solutions, offering a range of new opportunities for SMEs. At DBS, we increasingly adopt a co-creation approach. I emphasize the word co-creation approach to our product design and innovation, employing agile and human-centered design in our product development. We engage extensively with the corporate treasury and finance communities and work together to get into their digital journeys, to understand the emerging needs and opportunities that digital brings to their businesses. Our agile-based development is proving to be a very effective customer-centric way to bring a solution to market and add real value to customers. Treasury Prism is an example of this proactive approach. It offers treasurers the ability to independently experiment with cash and liquidity management structures and analyze the relative benefits and costs. It delivers immediate and contextual insights on the regulatory and tax implications. It empowers treasurers to benchmark various solutions and produce a more compelling business case. The combination of digital solutioning and contextual insights results in a value-rich interactions for treasurers as they explore potential opportunities and solutions. It can potentially elevate the partnership between DBS and Treasury and finance professionals well beyond the conventional bank-customer interactions. DBS Treasury Prism was showcased at the Global Treasury Conference in Barcelona last October in the Innovation Alley segment of the event, where we were up against 11 other fintech and technology leaders showcasing their innovations. I'm very proud to announce that DBS Treasury Prism emerged as a joint First Innovation Award recipient at the Euro Finance Award for Treasury Excellence, the Intelligence Treasury. If I may quote the award provider, quote, DBS Prism is the most interesting development the judges have seen in a long time. It solves a major treasury problem, which is optimizing your Asian pooling and treasury structures. This tool is open to all corporates at no cost and allow you to map the efficiency of your pooling structures and payment practices throughout Asia. It is easy to use and intuitive. They've taken a very difficult problem that many of you face and have a great way to display your current solution. If it is optimal, and more importantly, if it is not, how do you optimize it? So well done to BS of coming out with such an exceptional tool. End of quote. That is from the Eurofinance. This is a strong validation of our customer-focused design, where we place your needs at its core, and agility in the way it has been developed. This includes a design thinking 4D approach to development, which are discover, define, develop, and deliver. A commitment to ensure that the platform delivers strategic value to treasurers and their organization. In addition to the DBS Treasury Prism, we are also very honored to have some of your peers who will take the stage later during an exclusive panel on digital disruption to discuss change and the implications for corporate treasury. Our panelists will share key issues they face today and their views on digital and their digital aspirations of their business, and how they are seeking new ways to deliver against these aspirations. They will also touch on their experience on engaging digital capabilities or emerging technologies to deliver strategic value and how this impact the current operations and business. In closing, digital is changing our world, and there are profound implications for corporate treasury and your business. We are committed to deliver the latest digital solutions for corporate treasurers. New digital products are being developed, and the use of industry standards and APIs enhances integration and enables us to unbundle solutions and reconstruct them for you, building best-of-breed solutions. We are focused on developing client-centric solutions that move the dial, and we do so in an agile way to ensure you have the latest and best solutions fit for your business. We are here to help you reshape your cash management journey and co-create to deliver strategic value for your business. For now, we'd like to show you the world's first digital solutioning and insights platform for treasury and cash management. It's been built for you. It is the first time Transaction Bank has put the power back in your hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Iwan Rusli. Please remain on stage for the next session. So as mentioned before, we are all here today to witness the exclusive launch of Treasury Prism in Indonesia. Like it mentioned before, Treasury Prism is a revolutionary digital platform that enables the seamless design, simulation, and optimization of cash management structures. And more on that, it provides unbiased contextual insights on the latest regulatory and tax updates, giving you a comprehensive understanding of the respective costs and benefits for optimal decision making. So ladies and gentlemen, we would like also invite Mr. Mark Troutman, Group Head of Sales Global Transaction Services, DBS, and Mr. Rauf Latif, Managing Director, Group Head of Product Management at Global Transaction Services and Group Head of Digital Institutional Banking Group DBS, to join Mr. Iwan on stage for the launch. Please. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment we are waiting for. So gentlemen, there's a hologram buttons. So please, I will count from 5 to 1. So this is it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's do this. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Bapak Ibu sekalian, tepuk tangan yang meriah untuk DBS Treasury Prism, and please all gentlemen stand in the middle to get the photo op for this launching. So Mr. Mark, Pak Iwan dan juga Mr. Rauf, please stand in the middle. Untuk teman-teman dari fotografer boleh difoto bersama dahulu. Ini merupakan momen penting untuk hari ini karena ini merupakan peresmian officially launch of DBS Treasury Prism. Boleh tepuk tangannya sekali lagi Bapak Ibu. Okay, baik. Thank you so much. You may return to your seat. Thank you so much. So as promised before, today we'll get to know better about DBS Treasury Prism. And DBS announced the launch of DBS Treasury Prism in Singapore on October 2017, and we are glad to be able to share it with you today. So Again, if you have any questions later on during the demonstration, please post them up on your Pigeonhole Q&A portal via the URL that you see in the middle of your table. And if not, please log in via this URL, pigeonhole.at. So we can show it on the screen to give all the ladies and gentlemen here ideas how to ask questions later on, after, or during the demonstration. Yes, there it is. Pigeonhole.at, and you can access it with passcode DBS TP 2018. And of course, we will do our best to answer your questions after this session. Jika ada Bapak Ibu sekalian, setelah demonstrasi mengenai DBS Treasury Prism nanti, tentu kami sediakan waktu untuk bisa mengisi pertanyaan di Pigeonhole yang telah kami sediakan. Alamatnya sesuai dengan apa yang Bapak Ibu lihat dalam layar berikut ini. Dan tentunya di pigeonhole.at, passcode-nya sendiri adalah DBS TP 2018. Sekali lagi, DBS TP 20 atau 2018. So now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we would like to invite Aniruddha Joshi, or Andy, Head of Treasury Prism Digital Global Transaction Services, and Husin Hartono, or Husin, Head of Sales at DBS, to show us what this exciting prism or platform can do. So, Andy and Husin, the stage is yours.
Good morning, all this is distinguished guests. You have seen the live video of the Treasury Prism. Yes, it is live and available. And let me take you step by step in terms of what Treasury Prism is. Andy, my colleague, will do the demonstration. Andy, just one question. What is the difference between the internet banking idea and the Treasury Prism? Maybe the stage would like to know further about it.
Sure. Treasury Prism is quite unique and very different from internet banking. Internet banking is about what you are doing with a bank today, what sort of payments you are doing, what sort of account balances you have, and so on. It doesn't tell you whether you are doing the right thing with the bank. And Treasury Prism helps address that question. It is for you as the user to build different structures, experiment with them, before you actually implement them with your bank. So it is for you to find the right solution that fits your needs and then get it implemented, which you can then use using internet banking.
So it's different from internet banking. It's a simulation tools. Now in the treasury world, we're hearing customers now they're centralizing their cash pools, be it in the terms of the regional treasury centers or the group treasury centers. At least we will see challenges for treasury to set up central pools. At least we could see in terms of countries, in terms of currencies, in terms of regulatories. And maybe you can share a bit in terms of how can treasury pool have this kind of challenges in terms of countries, currency, and regulatories.
Definitely. In Asia, obviously, different countries have different regulations, and it can be a challenge to keep up with these regulations, which also keep changing. So in Treasury Prism, we have built a database of regulations, which is updated frequently. And it's not this database, but how it is used in Treasury Prism that is really powerful. So let me show you an example. Here I have loaded some data previously in a simulation. Let me just bring that up. So I have data across some 17 accounts in 6 countries. If we look at the map, you will see the balances across the different countries. Some of these accounts have positive balances, some have negative. There are also payment and collection flows attached to these accounts. So a typical scenario for any company that works across multiple markets. And say this company has decided that they want to reduce external funding and concentrate their cash. So they want to know if they are to embark on this journey, what are the regulations that they need to be aware of? And the way Treasury Prism helps in this is actually it lets you build this structure. So let's say we want to concentrate cash in Singapore, which is like a popular location for cash concentration. So you can simply go to the tools menu, select the appropriate tool. In this case, which stands for zero balance account. We said we want to concentrate the cash in Singapore. So I can simply select my header account as Singapore and then select all the participant accounts simply by clicking on them and dragging them across. The next step I'll do in building this solution is to click on this next button, but I can't. And the reason is actually on this right-hand side panel, which is the result of checking the structure that I'm building against the regulatory database. As you can see on the top here, the regulations or the insights are divided in different categories. So first one is errors. And I noticed that I have one error. If I click on this box, the error comes up. And now I know that I have added an India account into this cash structure, which is not allowed because of regulations. So the only way for me to proceed is to actually remove this account from my structure. The system will rerun the check. Now there are no more errors, but there are a couple of warnings. So if I look at the warnings, the first one is about Indonesia, that Indonesian accounts can participate in such a structure, but there are documentary requirements. The second one is about China. My China account can be part of such a structure, but I would need to pre-register it with one of the regulatory bodies safe in China. And the insights don't just stop here. They go on to opportunities, where Treasury Prism tells me that there is an opportunity under the government scheme in Singapore. By registering a treasury center, actually my company will get to enjoy tax benefits, both on corporate tax as well as withholding tax. So this is the way Treasury Prism helps with regulations. It not only tells you the regulation, but tells you in the context of what you are doing, telling you what to avoid, what to be aware of, and what to take advantage of.
Yes, I think it's very good. I think Andy is explaining about the structure whereby we can do sweeping in terms of that. But Andy, just one very simple one. These are the treasurers, they are CFO. They are always about numbers.
Yes.
I mean, is there a way we can quantify the impact of this actually?
Yes, we can. And this quantification again is not easy. It can be quite tedious because if you are implementing a new structure, you have to keep in mind what is the interest income, interest expense, bank fees, but as well as your own internal costs and things like withholding tax. So Treasury Prism actually does all this calculation behind the scenes as you build the structure. So let's go back to our example and say, I want to go and create this structure now. I just click on the button, my structure is created, and I start seeing a benefit number at the top here. So Treasury Prism tells me that if I were to create such a structure, there will be a benefit of $185,000, 185,000 Singapore dollars a year, just by implementing this cash pooling structure. I can actually look at more details of where this benefit comes from. I can look at maybe the country view of these benefits. So here it shows me how this benefit actually accrues at a country level. So as you can see, most of the benefit comes from Singapore. In fact, in China, the benefit is negative. So China loses out a bit, but overall at group level, the benefit is positive. So it makes sense to go ahead with this structure. And going back to Hussein's point about it being about numbers, there is a way where you can actually export all these calculations as an Excel sheet. Simply by clicking on this button, it will export out an Excel which shows all the calculations at account level. So Treasury Prism not only gives you the results, also gives you the calculations behind it.
Interesting. So it shows the benefit, the quantification of this, right?
Yes.
But Andy, just one thing. I mean, you have set a populated data into this, meaning you have put numbers into it. But if the customers or the customers, they want to do on their own, meaning they want to change the number, is it that easy?
It is. It is actually very easy. Let me show you how you can do it. So there are 3 different ways in which you can do data entry in Treasury Prism. Easiest is going to the map and say you want to add new account. Simply click on the country. In this case, I'll select Vietnam. I can just move these sliders around to indicate either positive or negative balance. And when I click this add button, behind the scenes it will create 2 accounts for Vietnam and add them to my simulation. I can also change my existing data using these sliders. There's another way, which is to look at the details, because sometimes it's not just the balance, but you want to be very accurate about the account holding entity, which decides whether it's a resident account or a non-resident account, which means different regulations apply to it. So this interface allows you to change that part. And last but not least, if you have multiple accounts that you want to load in the system, or even multiple payment and collection flows, you can use the file upload feature, where it supports simple comma-separated value files that can be uploaded either for accounts or for flows. So it's, the design principle was we want to reduce the amount of time taken in data entry, but let you explore more about how the structure works, what are the benefits, and so on.
Very interesting. So, see, you are saying that you can do simulations in terms of benefits of it, but sometimes the treasurers are confused about what are the different locations, the different structure. Can they find the optimized solution based on this actually?
Yes. That is one of the key points when we were researching for Treasury Prism. We realized that many times treasurers are aware that their current solution is suboptimal, but they simply don't have the time to put in the work to find out what is the best solution. So you can do this in Treasury Prism in a couple of ways. One is you can keep building simulations, different simulations, and see what are the benefits and how they compare. So I had, for example, created 2 simulations earlier, one with a ZBA header in Singapore, another one with ZBA header in Hong Kong, and the benefits are different. So I can go ahead and compare these simulations. But this is also not very fast. So the easiest way is to actually click this optimize button. When I do that, what happens is Treasury Prism actually creates all possible structures, checks them against the regulatory database, and gives all these different suggestions. These are ranked by the benefit amount. So if you saw, our simulation has a benefit of 185,000, but Treasury Prism has come up with something which gives a benefit of 1.73 million a year. So I can actually look at what Treasury Prism has done simply by clicking on this and looking at the structure. So we had just created this US dollar structure, but Treasury Prism has figured out that there are 2 other groups of accounts for which we can create ZBAs. One is for Singapore dollar in Singapore, and other is for Indonesian rupiah here. So by adding all these structures together, actually for all these, we can see, if we see the situation after the sweep is done, after the ZBA has happened, all the account balances at the headers are positive. And this means that the company has sufficient funds within the group to satisfy their funding needs. They don't need to borrow from outside and pay hefty overdraft charges. So this is where the benefits come from, and Treasury Prism gives you a solution which you may not have thought of.
Yes, you're talking about the ZBA, which is sweeping. What if the customer doesn't want to sweep the fund physically? Is there anything we can do about it?
Yes. So there is this concept of notionally aggregating cash. And if the company is not very familiar with this notional pooling, a starting point can be the knowledge center in Treasury Prism. And you can access that by simply using the search bar. So if I search for notional pool, it will take me to the knowledge center, where there is an article on treasury concept. if I look at that article, it actually explains what is notional pooling, what are the different variations, how do notional pooling structures work, how do they compare with other cash management structures, and also what is the impact of regulations, accounting practices, and also tax on notional pooling. So all these articles are there in Treasury Prism, accessible through the Knowledge Center. And what's important is that they are written from a treasurer's point of view. So they are bank agnostic, but really focus on the issues that treasurers care about. The second way is obviously you can go and look for a notional pooling structure that Treasury Prism has suggested. So if I go back to our list of optimized structures, I see there is notional pooling as an option for me to filter, because Treasury Prism has generated hundreds of solutions. One of them is notional pooling. And if I look at this structure, I will find that it's suggesting that the Indonesian accounts can actually be put in a notional pool as well. The benefit is different in this case, but this is also a valid structure. So if the company priorities are not about physically concentrating cash, but doing it notionally, they have an option here and they can find out about it.
Interesting. So it's just not only simulation tools, it gives more insight where you have a market knowledge in terms of that, right? Just a real case actually. I had a customer meeting a week ago. He was talking about entering a new market.
Right.
You're putting like Singapore and IDR. They're entering a market into a Thailand. Can we do it? Can we do something about it to see it?
Yes. So again, the Knowledge Center can come to rescue. If I search for Thailand, I will find that there is a country profile for Thailand in Treasury Prism. And just like the Treasury concept article, this is written from the perspective of a new company going into a country and what are the things that are important to them. So it talks about the country, but also what is the corporate treasury environment there like. What are the banking systems and payment systems available? Also, what are the recent developments? So this is the information that is useful for a company that is venturing into a new market. And this can be a starting point. Again, the simulation is still available. So I can always go back and maybe create new accounts for Thailand. Add the accounts to my simulation and see what are the effects of opening a couple of accounts in Thailand. So both the simulator as well as the Knowledge Center can help in such cases when companies are exploring different markets.
So, is this only for ASEAN country only?
Good question. It's not. Actually, we cover 24 countries. So if you look at the market profiles, you will see that we cover not only the Asian countries, but also the popular Treasury Center destinations or Treasury Center locations for international companies, which happen to be in Europe as well as in the US. So overall, we cover 24 countries, both in terms of the market profiles as well as the regulations.
So if you see, Andy, you're talking about optimizing only at this moment, you see optimizing the liquidity or the CASA or the operating. You mentioned brief about the market knowledge. But in terms of corporate, they do have their transaction as well, which is the AP, account payable, or the AR. So can this Treasury Prism simulate in terms including this transactional?
Yes, it can. It's not about only liquidity. So let me just show what you can do if the focus is on operational or transactional needs. So we explored this tool which was about balances, but there are also tools for flows. So let me start with instruments, which are the types of payments and collections that a company does. So in this case, say my company has this kind of payment and collection volume. They are using checks, they are using RTGS, they are using SKN, both for payments and collections. And if you look at the the bottom right-hand side of the screen, you will see that to support these payment and collection volumes, there is a cost. And the cost comes from both bank fees as well as the internal cost the company has in order to support in terms of their the teams which maintain such payments and collection flows. So if the focus is on reducing this cost, one way it can be done is simply clicking on the lowest cost button to find out what are the cheapest instruments to use in that market. In this case, Treasury Prism suggests that all the payments should be done through SKN, all collections done as SKN direct debit. If you do this, you will actually stand to save something like $38,000 a year. This can be a bit theoretical because you can't pay everyone through SKN. SKN has an amount limit. You may not have the beneficiary's account number. Similarly, direct debit from everybody for collection is also a bit idealistic. What might be more useful in this case is to use the market norm. This market norm data is something we get from an external provider, and it tells us how an average company in Indonesia does their payment and collection. And here we find that for collections, for example, companies use only 14% SKN direct debit. Rest is all paid to them through inward SKN. So even if my company, which originally was using checks, can move to this sort of a payment split, it stands to gain 36,000 a year simply by shifting to a more efficient payment type. And this is not all. We also have what are called flow tools. So these are additional services which banks provide, such as reconciliation, but sometimes also structures that corporates put in by themselves, like payment factories or shared service centers, or even netting centers. So if we look at, maybe let me just cancel out all the tools that Treasury Prism has selected by itself. If I look at this account in Indonesia, which has 26,000 payments, if I were to use payment reconciliation solution, actually I can see that the benefits on the flow side will start accruing. So not only can you simulate the effect of shifting to different types of payments, but also putting in additional services or additional corporate structures. What is their impact? Some of them have fixed cost. So Treasury Prism will calculate that and really show you what is the benefit of going in for a solution on the operational efficiency side.
Wow, I think it's a very good tools. Yeah, if you see, these are the simulation tools. It not only it simulates the liquidity management, yeah, but also it simulates the transactional optimizations.
Yes.
And on top of it, we have a market knowledge of that actually. So, jadi Bapak, Ibu-ibu, sebenarnya ini bukan cuma simulasi untuk liquidity saja. Ini bisa simulasi untuk transactional kalau kita mau men-centralize cash flow kita. Selain itu juga ada market knowledge mengenai market yang ada di bukan cuma Asia tapi beyond Asia. So Andy, last questions. Two questions actually.
Sure.
Who can register to this? Is this only DBS customer? Secondly, is it live right now?
So the answer to the first question is no, and the second question is yes. Treasury Prism is already live. We launched it last October, and since then we have more than 700 users who have registered and have been using it. It is available to everyone, and by that I mean not just DBS customers, even those companies which are not customers of DBS can use this. The registration is extremely simple. You can just go to the Treasury Prism URL, which is treasuryprism.dbs.com. Click on register to enter your email ID, set your own password, click on the register button. All this does is send you a verification email. Once your email is verified, you can actually start using Treasury Prism. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up your account and be active on Treasury Prism.
Oke, jadi Bapak, Ibu-Ibu, jadi bukan cuma nasabah DBS saja, nasabah non-DBS pun bisa register untuk Treasury Prism. Tinggal ke treasuryprism.com, kemudian enter and register. I think that's it. Andy, I think we're back to the MC.
Oke, boleh tepuk tangan sekali lagi untuk Mr. Andy and Mr. Husin. Tentu ini merupakan kesempatan sekarang untuk bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu untuk bisa bertanya sesuai dengan apa yang kami informasikan tadi melalui Pigeonhole. Sekali lagi mungkin saya ingin umumkan, boleh ditampilkan juga pigeonhole.at. Jadi passcode-nya sendiri DBS TP 2018. Oke, sudah ada beberapa pertanyaan yang hadir di Pigeonhole. There are all the questions on screen. Let's start with the first question. Okay, let's start with the first one. May I know the price to use Treasury Prism?
Okay, I'll take that. Treasury Prism sells at a very competitive price. We don't charge for it. The reason is we don't see it as something that we want to make money from, but we want to use it to engage our customers and our prospects, work collaboratively with them, and build solutions that help their business needs.
Free.
Yes.
All right, okay. The second question now. Is it possible to work on a simulation with my colleagues from different locations? Before you answer it, Bapak Ibu sekalian, jika membutuhkan alat penerjemah, kami juga sediakan. So for you guys who need translation devices, we also provide them for you. All right, Andy.
So collaboration with colleagues on a single simulation is something we are working on. Right now, the simulations you build, the data is shared only with your own, it's kept within your own ID. But this is something we know as a need because that's how treasury teams work. They work with their colleagues in other countries or maybe with the regional or global head office. So that's an enhancement we are working on. And because we work in an agile fashion, these enhancements come pretty fast. So shortly in future, you should be able to see collaboration capabilities in Treasury Prism, which will allow multiple people to work on a same simulation.
All right. Now the third question. Can I also load my own costs and interest rates for calculations?
Yes. You probably saw that Treasury Prism did a lot of calculations based on what we call the reference data that was loaded in the system. So this has interest rates, tax rates, and so on, including fees for banks, estimations of corporate costs, and so on, for the calculation. That gives you a solution or an answer which is directionally correct, but it may not be the exact benefit number that comes up. If you want to build a solution or a simulation that is very accurate, you can actually load your own costs and your own reference data. That is also done using the file upload function that we saw earlier. So in file upload, if you see, there is an option to upload reference data. Oops, I have lost my screen. But in file upload, there is an option where you can simply load an Excel sheet which has all the reference data that you have put in, and those numbers then are used for calculation. So the answer is yes, you can use your own values and calculate the benefits much more accurately.
So we can load them, right? Okay, thank you so much. So I have to say sorry that I have to put a stop. Oh, we have another one for this session? One more? Oh. Okay, that's it. All right, one more then. Okay, you used Thailand just now. Does it mean that DBS can offer cash management services in Thailand?
Husi, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think I'll take that because my stage, right? Anyway, the question is that can you use Thailand just right now? We use Thailand. DBS has a 6 core market: Singapore, Hong Kong, China, India, Indonesia, Taiwan. But in terms of our plan, actually, we are expanding the role, we are expanding capabilities whereby we have the partner banks. The partner banks in the market where we don't have, such as Thailand. So meaning that you, through with us, and then we'll just connect you to our partner bank in Thailand. Then we can serve you better. Jadi maksudnya Bapak Ibu, DBS cuma ada di 6 market, yang 6 core market, which is Singapore, Hong Kong, China, Indonesia, India, Taiwan. Tapi kita kerjasama dengan bank-bank tertentu termasuk Thailand, Filipina, dan Malaysia. Jadi kita tetap bisa serve Bapak-bapak, Ibu-ibu di negara-negara yang kita nggak ada. I think that's it.
All right, thank you. So we have to stop the Q&A here for this session, but don't worry, our Treasury Prism team is here this morning and they will be available to discuss more about the platform with you. So please be free to approach any of them members during the exhibition session or networking lunch later on today. So Mr. Andy and Mr. Hussein, thank you so much. You may return to your seat. Ladies and gentlemen, please give big round of applause to these gentlemen here, Mr. Andy Joshi and Mr. Hussein Hartono. Thank you. So now let's move on to the next segment. As promised before, we will now have a panel discussion among distinguished corporate treasury professionals who will share their views on their challenges with cash management and digital solution. So, and also the impact of digital transformation on their company's corporate treasury and digital strategy. So now, allow me to invite our panel moderator, Mr. Mark Trotman, Group Head of Sales Global Transaction Services, DBS. Mr. Mark. Boleh tepuk tangannya untuk Mr. Mark? So Mark, before we invite all the speakers here, what kind of expectation that we will hear from this gentleman here later on today?
Well, I hope we will leave you with a very strong impression of a recognition that the companies that are represented on the panel are indicative of companies just like you. Disruption from digital technology is impacting a range of companies, but at very different speeds, and it depends upon the industry in which you operate. But digital and technological change is rapidly, I guess, transforming the lives of not only ourselves as consumers, but your businesses. And what I hope you will take away from this is embrace digital, and that Treasury Prism is a very valuable tool alongside the products and services that we have on display later on this morning.
All right, thank you so much, Mark. So now allow me to invite all the speakers here. So first of all, Mr. Abdul Rauf Latif, Managing Director, Group Head of Product Management at Global Transaction Services and Group Head of Digital Institutional Banking Group, DBS. Thank you. And the next one, Mr. Ade Irawan, Group CFO of MG Group Indonesia. Thank you. And the next one is Mr. Putut Jagiri, Senior Vice President and the Head of Corporate Finance of PT Japfa Confit Indonesia Tbk. Please, sir. And the last one is Mr. Rinaldi Santosa, Director, PT Professional Telekomunikasi Indonesia. Thank you. So now, Mark, you can moderate the panel discussion, please.
Thank you, and thank you for your attention this morning. As the program sets out, technological change is affecting businesses today to a greater degree and speed than ever before, and I alluded to that a few moments ago. You know, the reality is that for finance and treasury professionals, they're under pressure to keep pace, to help keep their companies competitive. And as I think the two colleagues that just demonstrated some of the issues that treasurers have to face as they think cross-border and even domestic, it's complicated already in the day jobs. Once you introduce digital transformation in the business models, the pace of change is quite dramatic. But as I had the pleasure earlier this morning and last week, it's clear from some of the discussions that I've had with our panelists that the impact of technology on their on their finance and treasury, it really does have multiple sides and different speeds. And I guess the question I hope that we will answer for you is there a better way to respond to all of this? And while we necessarily can't answer that for everything that they deal with day to day, I hope that we will answer it for cash management for you today. So let me introduce our panelists very briefly to go further into what our MC just shared. So the panelists represent a cross-section of very vibrant businesses here in Indonesia. And we're very privileged to have what I hope will be representation or a representative of your own businesses. So we have in PT Protolindo a very vibrant domestic business, mostly active here in Indonesia. We have a very established multinational in the form of JAPFA. And lastly, we have a new economy business, a digitally native international e-travel business. Pak Rinaldi is director of Protolindo. He is, the primary business is leasing space in its multi-tenant towers for all major wireless operators here in Indonesia. Previously, he worked with PwC for 9 years and was a director for Indo-Pacific Public Relations. He's been a CFO for iCorp Media Indonesia and also was a finance specialist for ConocoPhillips earlier in his career. And finally, he's had a very interesting background. He did a stint alongside academia as a management consultant for the Faculty of Economics here at the University of Indonesia. Pak Pudit Jagiri is Senior Vice President and Head of Corporate Finance for PT JAPFA Comfeed. For many of you, I'm sure you know, JAPFA is an agricultural-based company headquartered here, but growing across the Asia region. He's had a long background in banking and finance, including 8 years in commercial banking, so he's been on, I guess you could say, my side of the table in many conversations. He's had 10 years in corporate treasury and 12 years in corporate finance. And his work experience has given him an opportunity to gain exposure to a wide range of countries in Asia, including Singapore and China, Vietnam, India, Myanmar, and some other ones that we may talk about earlier. And lastly, as our panelist, Pakyade Irawan is Group CFO for MG Group, Southeast Asia's largest bed bank company, which is a new term that I learned earlier. After graduating from University of Indonesia with an accounting major, he spent about 20 years in finance, accounting, and taxation roles across the big four accounting firms. He's worked with multinational banks and other multinational companies and had obtained a master's degree in operational management and decision-making from University of Indonesia and also has an actual tax brevet C certificate. Finally, joining me from DBS is Ralph Latif, introduced earlier as our group head of digital as well as DBS's group head of product management for transaction services. But it's important to note that as part of his digital role, he's focusing on strengthening DBS's digital suite of products and services for large corporate and institutional clients, as well as for small business owners. So a very wide-ranging brief in that. So without any further ado, let's start with a foundational question. And I think, obviously, aside from MG Group, both JAPFA and Protolindo, as I understand it, have corporate digital strategies. And the reason I'm setting MG Group aside is, as I said earlier, it's a digitally native company, so we know you must have a digital strategy. But for JAPFA and for Protolindo, where might you, I guess, suggest that you're on your corporate digital journeys? And maybe, Pak Rinaldi, if I could start with you.
Well, when we start the industry in toll providers, we were only start with about 200 towers, and then we were quite a small company at that point in time, and then because of the industry's developments, then we actually evolve to be a bigger company. And therefore, we need to have a footprint for our development, our evolution as well, in terms of the treasury. And we started by using manuals accountings to more, I would say, traditional e-banking. And nowadays, we already to the stage where we have the host-to-host transaction with banks, but we have a specific request on the host-to-host because we would like to have a multi-layer security. That means that we do not only need to enter to SAP or the company's ERP, but we also have to have security like tokens or password to enter the one transactions that will give our more security into transactions.
So in your transaction processing, actually the engagement is both first level of control in accounting system, second level of control is maybe the question, is it in Treasury where that release or that approval function happens? So Treasury's approving after accounting has also approved.
Yes, correct.
Double safety.
Double safety.
And maybe stepping back a little bit from Treasury per se, in the broader business of Protelindo, obviously as a tower business, so supporting the telecom needs of a wide range of different providers, digital, you're almost alongside the digital transformation of the Indonesian economy. Whatever happens, at least through telephone lines, mobile especially, is happening through your business model. Are there areas of change that you can see in, I guess, the rollout of digital telephone services that is starting to impact your business in the future? Do you have a new strategy to embrace that? The reason I'm asking the question this way is to give everybody a sense that it's not just a digital native business where transformation is occurring. It's in very established infrastructure businesses such as yours.
Well, I think the evolution is not only in finance sectors, but also in, I would say, in maintenance, for instance, that we already have tools for us in terms of helping our maintenance. We had to have this history of using papers and then photos and then emails. But right now we're using applications through Androids, whereas all the staff are actually able to make such report on maintenance for our towers, approximately about 15,000 across Indonesia. So by using mobile apps, we can take photos and then make a standard report through the apps, and automatically the report is gathered by our staff in the field, automatically be grabbed by the office, and then we actually have the obligations to give the report to our friends, the clients, the telco operators. So this is really helpful because it actually means the network people for our clients well informed, as well as we keep updated our maintenance as well.
It sets for you a competitive advantage, no doubt, versus other tower providers.
And then for the invoicings, we also have the development like the B2B with our clients. Means that we try to have a digital of soft digital bookkeeping. Like we enter to the client's system by scan copies, and they automatically, by putting our invoices in scan copies, automatically their accounts payables department will capture the informations. So there's less papers and less key into the system. So the people actually look more into reviewing and then make analytical instead of actually keying numbers into the system.
So there's quite a bit of digital and technological change occurring in your business model.
Yeah.
Pak Pudet, wrong country. I'm still back in Thailand here for a minute. For Japfa, can you describe a little bit about your own corporate strategy as regards technical?
So actually, Mark, like you said just now, that Java is operating in many countries, and actually the complication is not only is operating in many countries, but also operating in a lot of range of product. Because we did on feed, so actually we produce all the feed that we call it is protein, and then we are focusing in Asia. So we'll be moved to more countries. Is of course that for the company like us, digitalization is a must. We cannot do without this. So a couple of years ago, the management, our policy, our decision that we must build, we call it like a roadmap of our digitalization for until we have some ideal that we want to achieve, and then actually the ideal one is keep expanding and moving because the technology is keep moving and keep improving. So if we say that our company knows that on this roadmap of our digitalization, if we put it from 1 to 10, I think we can share that on our current we are on the level of 7. So we already more than halfway already. And then with that thing, I think also couple years show on our performance, show on our efficiency, show on our market penetration is getting better and better. That's on the operation. So our digitalization actually start from the operation side, mean that because we are doing 3 types of business model. One is the farming, second is the manufacturing, and the other one is distribution. So this one is different type of operation, different type of management. Of course, we need another different type of digitalization. So starting from this operation side, and parallelly also on the finance side, mostly in treasury, we starting do all this. We call it centralized treasury. I think when I heard this presentation this morning on Treasury Prism, actually that's what we want to do. That's what we want to do since a couple of years ago. So with decentralized treasury, actually we want to centralize all the treasury activity in Java. But the burden is because we have across the country. So before I saw this Treasury Prism, actually a couple of years ago when we're trying to penetrate Vietnam, we're trying to build the system in Myanmar, Myanmar not is on this Treasury Prism, but trying to do in India, in China. Actually, the way to be gathered, the way to get the view on this country about the banking system or treasury system is with trying to discuss with the banks, of course, the local banks or the foreign bank in each country, but mostly also we hire lawyer to give advice on our thing. But if we know that treasury from 10 years ago, I think we will save a lot of money because you don't need to pay a lot of lawyers, or we trying not to have a lot of time.
There might have been some bankers out of a job then.
Yeah.
Let me hold you there for just a quick minute, and if I could turn to Ralph, and just, again, trying to level set from a bank's perspective, what's DBS doing in the digital strategy?
Thanks, Mark. I think there's quite a number of things going on, and I think one of the things we were very conscious of the fact, or at least the group management of the bank was very conscious of the fact, is we had to do something in a drastic way in terms of how we were trying to transform the bank, and also in terms of trying to see how we are the forward bank for our customers in terms of this entire digital transformation journey. So there was a lot of big exercises which was done around trying to understand other organizations around the world of how they run processes. As a bank, what we really do is run a lot of processes. So what I think was very clear, in the longer term, or even the short 3 to 5 years in the longer term, our competitors, in our view, is not really the banks. Our competitors really are the big techs, okay, the big companies, who are digital-led platform companies like the Amazons, the Alibabas. These are the people that we are day to day now more competing with. And one of the things we realize, they are able to handle merchants, volumes, transactions by the thousands per the minute. And how are we as a bank? We already do some of that today, but how do we scale up in a form that we can build for the future? And also bring banking into a very different experience for the customer. And one of the themes that we have is actually making banking invisible. I think what's important is for our corporates to actually run their businesses, and banking just being the backbone behind it to be able to support all the transactions and all the requirements that you have in a digital fashion. So with that came about three things. One is how we acquire customers. So we had to think through as a bank, part of our digital strategy, it's not just putting products and services in place. It's also about thinking through from the very beginning, how do you even acquire a customer? If you look at the Googles and the Facebooks, the cost of their next customer is virtually nothing, right? For a bank, the cost of acquisition is a lot higher. We need people in geographies, locations, branches, we need relationship managers, so the cost of acquiring customers is a lot higher. So how do you start? So we started off on the SME segment, which is the main driver of main requirements. So one of the things we want to do is we want to digitally acquire customers. And we have been quite successful with that in Singapore. In Singapore, for the SME business, almost 94% of the SMEs are actually onboarded digitally today. And that's a huge step up from where we were in terms of branches and paper. So once we acquire, we now have access to our client, and we have access to give them all the products and services that we have that would require typically from a bank. And how do we ensure those transactions? Is the second piece, which is what we call our transact criteria, which is how do we ensure that we start to process these transactions more digitally? I know a lot of you would have heard the term STP, straight through processing. I mean, we still use some of that terms in our bank. But then again, multiple STPs lead into more electronic fashion. How do you make that digital? Digital meaning when you do something, the end response and the instant response is the response is instant. And how do we get that happening? So one of the things that we have is to going forward, our day by day, we're engineering our processes to make sure that we can give you an instant experience in everything that we do. And in Singapore, again, and now we have great success in India. We're now trying to explore one or two opportunities in China and very soon into Indonesia, which is to see how for all transactions that you bank with DBS, we can actually give you that number of seconds instant fulfillment. That's one of the goals that we have in terms of how we want to do this. The third piece is engagement. So when we onboarded the customers in, now we digitally transact and make the instant experience better. The next piece is engaging. How do we further cross-sell all our products and services? And engagement is the most difficult part because typically customers come into the system, do their banking and go away. But what we want to be able to do is bring customers in, get transactions going, but also suggest new concepts and ideas, like I think what we do with Prism, in terms of engaging new solutions and services. And one of the things that we're also going to spend a lot of time on, we're already spending a lot of time on, and sometime this year, we will have some of the initial piloting of some of that services, which is what we call analytics-based lending. So based on analytics, in terms of all the data points, in terms of how you behave, how you bank with us, and other information about the companies and corporates out there in you're transacting with, we can use some of the data points to see how we can engage with the customers even better and provide certain prescriptive solutions, possibly. So this is our overall strategy in terms of how we acquire, how we transact for you, and how we engage you better in more and more services that you need to be with the firm. So that's the overall strategy that we have. And I think it's very, very important because one of the things which was very clear is for us is if we were to just sit down and build applications or apps, everybody can build apps. The most important thing is to build an infrastructure where everything that we do for you, we can actually scale up and build up. So one of the things that we have embarked on, and we are quite proud of as right now, is probably the only bank in the world, and I think that's probably why you'll see DBS a lot in a lot of this LinkedIn and everything that you follow, you will see 90% of our infrastructure has moved to cloud native. which now allows us to be a lot more nimble in feature function and capabilities that we want to put in the system. So that makes the whole acquiring, transacting, and engaging piece with the customer a lot more effective.
So it's a pretty transformational digital strategy that DBS has. And now, as a bank, and as we think of digital disruption, which is occurring across the financial and I guess fintech space, I guess that's a natural thing. What I hope with the three panelists that we have, what we're showing is very different businesses and very different business models where technology and the pace of change is affecting every one of us, not just financial institutions, but animal feed and animal husbandry type company, satellite tower business for mobile telephony, which we all use, and obviously a bed bank company. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But Ralph, I liked what you said there about part of the strategy and part of the ethos within DBS is to eventually make banking invisible, because really the pace of change is where the focus for finance and treasury should be within each of the companies, not worried about how do I do my banking, right. And we'll come to that in a couple minutes. Pak Pudit, you started to talk a little bit about what you're doing in your own treasury organization with digital change. Maybe, why don't I start with you and have you continue on that theme. What are you doing now, and what do you have plans over the next 12 to 18 months as you think about digitalizing and bringing more technology into your treasury and finance function? And then I'll come to you, Pak Ade.
Okay, Mark. I think what we did is actually, because we're trying to, of course, the first one is we do all this central treasury. We started by country. Currently, we can say that in Indonesia, actually, we've done it already. Actually, it's almost that we are in state that we are quite comfortable with our cash management and treasury centralized in Indonesia. We have more efficient. We have getting more easy to manage. Which means that we have application internally that we can monitor all. We can centralize our cash balance. We can monitor everyday cash balance, and also we can also have a chance to optimize the cash balance in company. I think all the treasury, all the CFO in this room understand what is did, right? Because we're just trying to get the revenue from that. And then we move to another countries, I think, because the other countries also like Vietnam, Myanmar, the banking system is different. So we're trying to each country on this centralized treasury, and then at the end, actually, we will go to the on the headquarters in Singapore. So all the group will be centralized, and then when we develop to another country, we just want to replicate this thing. So that's actually what we trying to achieve in 2 years from now.
Not easy, is it? Pak Ade. MG is a very interesting company. You taught me a new word earlier today about bed banking. So within your business model, what are you doing in finance and treasury from a digital engagement perspective? And do you have plans over the next 12 to 18 months to do more?
Okay, thank you, Mark. So first, let me explain about our business, so to get better understanding for the audience, what we are going to do. So our business, core business is the bed bank. So we are selling hotel room, but more on B2B. So our client is travel agent, not only in Indonesia, but also all over the world. And also our customer is not only Indonesia agent, but also all over the world travel agent. So we are using online platform. So now we have 7 products as our distribution channel. The one that perhaps you guys likely know is rajakamar.com. So that's the online platform for B2C, but that is small business for us, not really main focus for us. So again, responding to my question about what we are going to do in terms of treasury. So similar with Pak Putut, that we also have in mind that we set up centralized treasury function. So we have contract with the hotel all over the world and also with the agent all over the world. And now we also already become the Southeast Asia largest bed bank. So the digital indeed really help us to support our growth and also to expand. And then the second thing, of course, we need to explore whatever payment mode, whatever leasing mode from the hotel and then for the travel agent, which can be make us more and more efficient in terms of the transaction costs. So looking at the event today, like the Treasury Prism, which is launched by DBS, indeed, I feel that it will be very useful for the business like us. And I think also with most of you guys will be very useful. So we can see what we can optimize in terms of national pooling, and it can also help that it can simulate also on the transaction level from our account receivable for our account payable. And then in the next 12 months, we also planning to explore about the virtual credit card. And then we also thinking about our FX strategy, since we are buying in one currency and selling to different currency. And it's also important for us to become one of the fundamental strategy. So bottom line, we can be really efficient. Again, that it will become like a good treasury also, and for the company itself to support our growth with the minimum and efficient in terms of the transaction costs.
A lot
Thank you.
to do.
Yes,
A lot
sure.
to do. Pak Rinaldi, for you, you'd already done quite a bit of the centralization work. You'd already put in place the accounting system. You'd already put in place the host-to-host arrangement with your bank. Is there anything else as you look out over the next 12 to 18 months?
Well, our industry is actually very heavy capital intensive, whereas we really need funding from the banks. So there's a lot of questions coming from the stakeholders and the shareholders. How do I have efficient costs? Means that also how do I actually make our cost of fund more efficient? So there's a lot of effort that we do, back and forth, about how to make our interest costs cheaper. There's a lot of questions that we pose to the bank, whether we can have it swap or lock or swap, whatever that is. And then we really depend on this by asking the bank. And then it may be when we ask the questions and when they get back to us, the timing is different, which actually will make us difficult in taking decisions, or we probably a little late in making such decisions because the interest already moved up. So it really have to have a sort of like a quick decisions. So it really helps Pool if then we actually have a system that actually coming from the bank that help us make some analysis, and then if we think it's right, then we will enter into transactions. And if the bank can help us make some preliminary analysis on cheaper fund, on what we should do with it, and then it will be bringing the best relationship with the bank.
Makes complete sense. And it's probably a great place to segue across to you, Ralph, if I could. You touched a little bit already on Treasury Prism. We've already seen a demonstration here. And you talked about DBS's broader digital strategy. But as you bring it into sort of your product domain for transaction services, and just listening to Pak Rinaldi, I hear API and sort of appification of the banking process, but what else is DBS doing?
Well, I mean, I will still put it in the context of overall invisible banking, and if that's the end state of digital world. I don't know if I can use the word end state anymore, but if I look forward around where I think we want to get to, and we want to be at 2020. If I look at some of the timelines, we want to be in a state where we have every tool that is required for a corporate that will make the banking experience invisible. And in my view, at this point of where we are in our developments and what we're going to be launching to some of these countries right now, I think we are almost about 70 to 80% there in terms of trying to give the full invisibility from a banking perspective. And one of the enablers behind all of that is actually the APIs. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with APIs, but APIs are basically application program interfaces, which basically gets two softwares to talk to each other in a more seamless way. And I think that has become very powerful since it come to the fore, and now more and more people can actually know how to use and consume this kind of product to make the experience better. And to give you a basic example, everything that you do through your online banking platform can now be done through APIs, which means, sending instructions to the bank. You used to have, online banking or a host-to-host. We can now do this through APIs, which we get information more real-time into the bank, number one. We can process them, like I mentioned to you earlier. The plan is to process them in seconds. That's what we are moving to. The only thing which is stopping us from doing some of that is some cross-border transactions and countries which have not picked up real-time systems. Otherwise, we are pretty much going to be on board. The third thing is you want your statements and advices. We can give that all to you in APIs, right? So, and you can get that instantly. The moment the instructions transaction, the moment the transfer, you get the statuses instantly. It's almost like how much you look into your experience around ordering a cab. You know exactly at any point in time what is happening. You're never lost. There's no reason to call customer service when you're calling for a car. Okay, so that's the experience that we want to get to, and we're almost there. In fact, a lot of the APIs to support all these interfaces are currently already in place. So in terms of, again, payments, receivables, statements, alerts, everything that you require can be given. And that can be given in a country scale and a regional scale, depending on how your treasury activity and all that is. As we use Treasury Prism to simulate some of the scenarios, all of that various scenarios and situations that you will have can be incorporated from an API perspective as we build on some of the stuff. So that's the main thing. And if I was to get that right, the more important thing is to make sure that yourselves are also ready to accept APIs. So that's the other thing. So what we have found is companies which are digital-led companies, where they have a platform which a lot of the interfaces to the customers are digital, they've all been very adaptive in supporting some of that. So we have about, right now in the pipeline, I have about 50 plus customers that we're doing journey studies with, where we actually sit down with the customer to do a mapping exercise around how to go about solving digital challenges, okay? Or challenges that they have today, which we can look to see how digital can help. The journey exercises, if some of you are not familiar, what is called the 4D, where we discover the problem with you, we define it with you, what the solution should be, and then we develop and then we deliver it for you. So that's the journey exercise that we do. Sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes months. It is very useful when you know your business is getting disrupted, or you have to do something, there's an area you want to work on, but you're not sure what the solution is. That's when you do a journey exercise. And that's when we bring them to the bank and try to map out the problem and try to see whether it's a one solution or multiple solutions. Today we have done solutions for a whole bunch of insurance companies, voucher companies, taxi companies, and shipping companies across the world that we have supported as of today. So there's quite a few things already in place, solving service issues, but all leading towards how we want to make banking invisible.
Well, we're going to try something different this time, and we're going to do a quick poll. So it's our turn to ask a couple of questions of you. And I'm going to need, I think, a little bit of help from our support team. We're going to put up a first poll question here, which is is your company's cash management operations, and it can be domestic or domestic and international, would you view it as efficient? If yes, please vote by ticking number 1 on your pigeonhole. And if no, please give us a comment. And what we're going to do is take a survey just of you very quickly to get a sense from us as panelists if you're assessing yourselves as efficient in cash management or not. And then we'll ask a second question. So far we have 4 people, 5 people. We have quite a few questions that we'll get to at the end. So trying to get a sense for, just from your own perspectives, how you'd rate your company's cash management efficiencies today. And remember, Treasury Prism, part of the opportunity with this new technology is to make it very easy for you to independently assess whether your practices today are as current as what sort of industry best practices is suggesting they could be. And you don't have to talk to a bank to do it. You can assess yourselves anonymously. Okay. So kind of out of a poll of 10 respondents, I think we have 9 to 1. So let's say 10 to 1. So let's say we're sort of almost 90% efficient. Very good. We have a second question, and we'll put that up in a moment here. So when you think about cash management, and you think about potentially having to review what you're doing, and so this may be for the other 40 or 50 of you out there, is it easy for you to get information to improve your cash management? So remember, Treasury Prism, one of the premises is that it should be easier to find information about both what you can do domestically in Indonesia and indeed in other markets. So to the comment Pak Pudit made earlier. So again, if you're finding it easy to get, if you're finding it easy, please vote 1. If you find it not easy, please indicate so in your comments. Okay. 14 to 3, I think. 16 to 3. So that's a good state, I'd suggest, for most of you. Your engagement with your bankers or other information sources here is actually a little bit more tilted in a positive sense than what we tend to see in other markets. The reality tends to be that what Treasury Prism has, through feedback that we have, and we've already heard from some of our panelists, is that getting information is at best, it's a slow process because you have to ask a variety of different sources. At worst, it's a very costly process. And Pak Winaldi was sharing with me earlier just the amount of money that they ended up having to spend just to get information about what was possible in one country. Once you consult the lawyers, the tax people, and the accountants, was very, very difficult. Okay, so let me then transition to our probably the third theme question that we have, and that's here as we turning to Treasury Prism per se. So I think what we were seeing, what I'd hoped the poll would show, and maybe it doesn't quite so easily here, is that the recurring frustration in cash management internationally tends to be in figuring out what's allowed. And I think each of the panelists has either had experience directly in their current roles or in recent roles in terms of answering these kinds of questions. And as Raouf referenced, Treasury Prism, which was launched late last year, the aim of it was really to provide transparency to market information across Asia Pacific, but also in a number of other key locations where larger multinationals tend to structure their liquidity management and treasury management affairs. So maybe, Pak Pudit, you had shared earlier that you had seen this Treasury Prism in action. You made a couple of comments here about if only you could have seen it 7 years ago, it might have been easier. Maybe any other comments that as you have reflected on how you could apply it in your business today and in your role today, can you share with the audience?
Yeah, actually, is the cost we manage with all these units, either in Indonesia or other country. Usually, there is like each country have a treasurer. And always the question that always raised to us as the head in the head office is always asking, so how to manage the cash? How will we put the money that will maximize our return, or the other one is minimize the risk, right? So always asking the question, how to open on this bank, that bank, or we put on this our excess cash on this bank or that bank, is always the question that raised to us. So with this treasury prism, actually it's simple for us the question. Please upload in the treasury prism and just do the simulation, and we will understand actually what is the result. And that's actually the implication, the application that we want to do in our company for all the treasurer. At least it's easier for us as the head office treasurer to improve, to educate actually for all the treasurer. Of course, because like the treasurer is not on the same level, like maybe Indonesia is more advanced, Singapore is more advanced, but like on the other country that also is still emerging is difficult. With this tool actually it's easier for us to bring them up, to upgrade them up to how to manage their cash management.
And just out of interest, with your colleagues in some of the other countries, so for instance, Pak Tommy in Ho Chi Minh City, do you see, have you started to use, or are you introducing Treasury Prism to your finance teams in the subsidiary locations to help them with their own either knowledge or improvement processes?
Yep, yeah, sure. That's what we want to do actually, because we are now is trying to, our next target to build up this central treasury in Myanmar, actually, or in Vietnam, actually is the one that is more easy that we introduce the treasury prism.
Okay, thank you. Pak Nade, so for MG, as you've described, you're starting to expand overseas. You are setting up sales and marketing offices in a number of countries. Can you comment a little bit about how you see Treasury Prism being useful in your own organization now?
Okay, so Treasury Prism, of course, will be helpful for our plan to expand overseas. So far, by managing treasury traditionally, so if we want to see how efficient we are, so sometimes it's not really quantified. So it just by feel, or it just by thought that
experience,
something like that. But what this kind of tools, I think it will be really helpful for us, so we can really quantify how much will be the saving, and then for what we did currently, is it really already efficient or most efficient? So it will really help for us, Mark.
That's actually music to my ears, because that's what I've seen as we've, in the 4 months or 5 months that we've had this platform available. A number of my salespeople use it in different countries, but the feedback that we get from corporates is quite fascinating. You talk about business case, so putting numbers in behind sort of a recommendation, let's say to the board or to senior stakeholders, it's very, very powerful. Ralph, maybe very quickly, from other client engagements that you've been exposed to, any other sort of, I guess, uses where you've seen, or client feedback, or just company feedback, where you've seen it come to place?
I mean, one of the things I'll say about Treasury Prism, and also to the point I was mentioning earlier about how we do discovery and journey design study, we interviewed close to 50 corporate treasurers. And the interview process was clearly outlining some of the challenges they were facing. And a lot of them are regional treasurers in the context of asking specific questions around how they look at this challenge and how they're going to go about it. So what we built in Treasury Prism is actually an outcome of this 50 treasurers' inputs. It was designed for them, and it's designed for treasurers and CFOs. When we brought this out, and when we did some of the demos in the countries, in some of the events and all the customers, I think it came across very fascinating to them because they did not see something that this is actually doable. I mean, it was the same challenge for us when we think, are we going to sit down and work out the algorithms for all the different possible computations? And I think, Andy, we can catch up with Andy separately later. There's hundreds of different algorithms behind this in trying to give the right answer to the customer. And it's critical. And we get down to the level of how much of efficiency that we also provide in the flows and the balances. So quite a bit of algorithm which went in. So customers were really fascinated. I think one of the things they were also thinking is this sort of, for those who are issuing RFPs, this is half the battle is, gone, because that was the most difficult part of the RFP for a lot of the people. The other piece is also what was really good for one of the corporate treasurers is the homework done for them. Okay, so if they were to go to management and explain why different structures had different values and all of that, you can put in the numbers here and get the simulations, and you use this to actually evidence that the various simulations give different outcomes. And you can do that in minutes, literally, or seconds. Once you put the numbers in, it's pretty much there. So those are some of the positive feedback that we had got. So it clearly tells us that the clients are keen to see how we can further enhance this further to meet more and more of their requirements. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. The other piece which we're also exploring to see is, it's still in the works in terms of how we're going to do this, how we can take all that brain power behind Treasury Prism and API that to treasurers as well. So you don't have to use Treasury Prism to go in. So that's still in the air, but we're still working on it. But you can simulate this on a daily basis if you want to on certain situations instead of going into a separate application. So a couple of models being looked at. So that's all based, again, on our customer feedback.
Great segue to our Q&A section. And we've had through Pigeonhole already about 10 questions. We'll see if I can control the app here. But actually, Ralph, I have to say that a lot of the questions stem off of your answers. So So let me go actually with a little bit more specific to one of the individual questions. I'm going to start on the bottom right. And the question was, our group operates in several countries such as Indonesia, Singapore, China, and Australia. And there were some issues regarding tax for funds transfer internationally. Could Treasury Prism help? And so, Ralph, I'll point that one to you.
There are some issues regarding tax and international fund transfer. Could Treasury Prism help? So technically, there should be two specific areas. If I've not done the actual simulations myself, and Andy, if you can correct me if I'm wrong. But as far as I know, in terms of any sort of, if you put any sort of activity in Treasury Prism where you do highlight Australia as one of the countries that you have an account with, the simulations will actually show you if there's any specific restrictions around it, right? That's one. And the tax-related issue along that, and particularly with Australia, is normally the withholding tax problem. So that typically tends to come out, and it should show on the right panel of the Treasury Prism platform. So yes, the answer is yes. And of course, if you go down to the country profiles, you should be able to get information on Australia as well, which should give you more details around it.
So yes, yes, and yes. Yes. 3 different places. Next question, I think this is perhaps a little bit more broad to, and would like to draw on the benefits of each of your experiences here. Right there in the top right, what are your company's main challenges when you implement your company's digital initiatives? And so reflecting back, maybe Pagade, as you looked over the last few years, what are the main challenges that you've had?
Okay, so the main challenges, first about the technology. So I can divide my digital journey of our business to 3 stages. So this is before 2014. We are still a small company. We just use simple technology. And our product, at that time, only 3 products, including rajakamar.com. So we cannot really grow without enhancing our digital technology. And then after 2014, then we step ahead, we develop our technology, our platform, and also our accounting system, so to cater our needs. And then until 2017, it's about 3 years journey, we can become the biggest bed bank in Indonesia and even in Southeast Asia. And 2018 going forward, we are also continue enhancing our technology platform, so we call SMG 3.0, because we want to cater our needs not only for the next 5 years and even for the next 10 years, because we want to be a leading regional player in the world. So again, in terms of the digital initiative, indeed our main challenge at the time, technology, and until now we are still progressing to enhance always our technology, and we expect can connect to our customer and supplier in terms of through API, and also with the bank as well. We are exploring for the payment purpose, for AR, and so on, etc. Thank you.
Can I ask just a quick follow-up question? So obviously the platform and the business model is very digital. In your own experience, is Treasury keeping up?
Yes, certainly the Treasury is keeping up. So in the old era, we just use conventional bank, and then later on we are moving to e-banking. And then in the next journey, we are also thinking of API connection with the bank, with the customer, with the supplier, so we can be more and more efficient. Thank you.
I asked the question because about a month ago, Ralph and I were hosting a panel in Hong Kong with one of the marketplaces that is quite, I guess, well known in Southeast Asia. And their biggest issue was actually not that the platform couldn't keep up, it's that Treasury was still caught in sort of well behind, let me put it that way. And they were still dealing with paper collections, physical cash collections from their customers in a number of Southeast Asian countries. So, no, thank you. Ronaldi, similar question to you then. As you think about the digitization and the pace of digital change, what would you say is the biggest issue facing your company?
Well, I would not say the big issues, but the challenge also the people, that we have to educate them that such changes is an evolution, it's a must.
So it's people change. People changed.
Yeah, people actually have afraid of these changes.
Yeah.
They're afraid of losing their job. They're afraid of losing credibilities, or they are afraid actually losing some contributions. So the most important things that we have to build up trust to them, that such changes is necessary and actually will bring out the best in them, like they can perform better and have a decent life, a better life, and also for the company perspective, be operating more efficient.
And Pak Budut? Anything different from your perspective?
I think also our company have the same problem with the same challenges that Pak Renaldi and Pak Adi happen in the companies. Also, I think it's the same because like you said that sometimes the application is moved fast and then our team didn't keep up. So that's actually the challenge. And the other one, actually the one that also challenge for us is because the size, the area is quite wide, what we are operating. So that's the challenge to ask the support from all the division, from all the people, then find the correct program that everybody understand. So that's why the challenge is we understand, but that's why we like building the roadmap, and then for the IT and the digitalization, and then we build like since this this year we build, like, we call it like the alignment process for all the operation, finance, through this digitalization. That's actually challenge that we're trying to cover and trying to improve our management on digitalization.
Thank you for that. I think next one, Ralph, is actually, let me point it back to you if I could. So this is to your earlier, I think, comment. How can DBS make banking invisible? Now the question says in Indonesia, but let's take it up a level.
We are ready, are you? Is the question. I guess so we will be further pushing the envelope. I think in terms of Indonesia market and the readiness, our only readiness element to say a full yes to Indonesia is the readiness of the customers over here. I think it's like I said earlier, the digital-led companies are more ready to engage in a way that the banking experience goes to the background and they focus on the business. So you don't have to worry about a banking activity as such. That's what invisible banking is all about. And I think we have APIs and virtual wallets and cloud-based applications and the tools that you need. In fact, we're even exploring things like blockchain and everything else that we want to be looking at. These are all the tool sets which will make that all possible. And we're already exploring in this area in quite a bit. So as far as Indonesia is concerned, this is a market where we are terribly excited about in terms of bringing, in fact, all of the tools that I mentioned earlier. In fact, if I was to filter out probably some of the other countries in the region, I may filter out some, but Indonesia is a country where I think all of these opportunities are right in front of the fore. So as you want to start moving on your transformation journey, we will take you through the process where we try to make some of this process invisible. There should not be a payments process. You should be selling something and we should know when to collect it for you. And if you're waiting to be collecting something, we should know when to be able to tell you that. So those are some of the stuff that we're working on, and to be honest, it's quite ready already. So I think we just need to link up a few more components, and we'll be ready to support you in this market.
And let me just add a couple comments there. One of the points that our CEO has made recently in a senior leadership offsite was that individuals don't wake up thinking they want to do banking in the morning. They don't wake up thinking I'm going to make a payment to the point you said. They wake up thinking about maybe in an individual way. I want to buy a house, or I want to buy a car, or I need to pay for my daughter's wedding, and so there's a lifestyle choice that occurs. There's something that happens in their background. So taking that into the corporate space, it's as you said, there's activity that happens in the corporate business. It's not the transaction itself.
Okay. I mean, as a bank, as you buy and sell, the bank should know. And since I know, I can create the underlying transactions for you. That's where the future is going. Right now, the banks tend to be a post box, so I don't know what transaction you're going to make until you send it to me today. So we're trying to move that one step further. So the more we are linked and connected with the corporates, the more we will know in advance that we need to do this for you. So that's the one step forward, or multiple steps forward, I would guess, to get that going.
I'm going to try to change to the next question, and hopefully it comes up. Are the banks prepared to support companies in the new digital age in terms of capabilities? And I think, Ralph, a lot of what you've been sharing earlier, it's in the top middle.
Which one?
Top middle.
Yeah. Okay. Are the banks prepared to support companies in new digital age in terms of capabilities? I'm not sure about banks, but we are.
Good answer.
We definitely are. Because frankly, in fact, Mark and I always speak about when we go to any of these markets, is our only plan really is to get more and more digital, right, as a firm. It's to get more and more digital in improving client experience or customer experience. At the end of the day, the most important thing is the experience. In all our apps that we use today in our B2C flows, you will find that if you don't like the experience, you don't use the app anymore. It's the same feel that we want to be able to do with the banks. So the idea is to get more and more embedded. And in terms of digitalization, you'll also find not just the bank side, even your ERP providers are starting to move in that direction. So in reality, it's all going in one direction where we will be able to connect a lot faster. The question is, where do you start? Which are the initial components? These are areas where we can work with you with to move this thing forward. Complexities. What's interesting about complexities is that and when you try to digitize certain things, some of the old problems that you had actually don't exist anymore because you try to handle the problems a little upfront. So that's the journey.
So the problem solves itself. Look, we have 1 minute left for one question, and I didn't want to avoid the most voted for question. So Ralph, it'll come back to you. The
126 votes. Okay, let me make this very clear. Okay, everybody calls themselves fintech these days. Okay, there are so many. Every software company that I speak to, they call themselves a fintech, and they've been around for like 50 years. Okay, so what we we have a couple of few angles. One, if you just look at fintechs as service providers, we work with a lot of them right now. At least at the innovation lab, without the different departments having different discussions, just from the lab itself, we have spoken to at least, and we have touch points with at least 200 fintechs already, okay, globally. That means we speak to them, we find out what they have, we narrow down some of their stuff that they do, we put them into pools of certain capabilities for certain areas. As the businesses need them, we work with the lab who will recommend certain fintechs which we can use, and that's how it works. That's how we organize ourselves in terms of approaching fintechs. We have no issues with fintechs. Our chatbots are done through fintechs. Treasury Prism is a combination of a few players, Amazon being one of them in terms of hosting the whole thing for us. We have about almost a dozen fintechs just supporting us on our data analytics platforms. So as far as fintechs are concerned, bringing knowledge and power into the digital age in terms of what we want to do, fully supportive, fully collaborative. No issues there at all. In terms of the Alibabas and the Amazons, we call them fintechs. We classify them more as big techs. Okay, I think we learn from them. We also see how they organize. Our CEOs do have constant conversations with these people around how they operate, how they build the models. And we work with them too. So we don't see them as competitors as a banking business, and they don't see that as well. I mean, they are just trying to improve their customer experience. What we do is when we work with some of these players, we're trying to see how we can bring what we are good at as a banking provider, all our banking services, to these platforms. And there's constant conversation around how that's going to happen. Now, of course, we have also seen some of them offer some financial products and services, and I think there's nothing that they can do that we can't do either. So I think it's a fair game out there, and the person who I think has the best customer experience will probably win. And that's how we take it.
Thank you, Ralph. And let me just say thank you to the rest of our panelists this morning. Really appreciate your time and your insights. Please, after this break, please do take time to look at the capabilities and the solutions that have been digitally enabled that we have on show just outside. That's it for our panel. Thank you very much.
Please give a big round of applause to our panelists and moderator here, Mr. Putut Jagiri, Mr. Ade Irawan, Mr. Rinaldi Santosa, Mr. Abdul Rauf Latif, and Mr. Mark Troutman for the insightful conversation we just had. Please remain on stage, everybody. Sorry for that. Thank you. And we would like kindly ask all panelists to remain on stage, and we would like also to invite Mr. Iwan Rusli to join Mr. Mark and Mr. Rauf on stage to present the DBS Token of Appreciation for our distinguished speakers. So first of all, from Bapak Iwan Rusli, for Bapak Ade Irawan. Boleh tepuk tangannya Bapak Ibu sekalian? And then after that from Mr. Mark Troutman to Mr. Putut Jagiri. Boleh tepuk tangan sekali lagi. And the last one from Mr. Rauf Latif to Mr. Rinaldi Santosa. Yeah, please give another big round of applause And all gentlemen, please gather in the middle to get the photo op here. Thank you. All right, thank you so much for the insightful conversation there. And you can please return to your seat. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, again, like as we promised, we have more insightful event for you guys. The next segment of today's event where we have prepared something special for you. In the exhibition area, you will see 4 booths. Namely, first is the Treasury Prism, and the second one is Account Services and Liquidity Management. The third one is Payables and Receivable Solution, and the last one is Connectivity Solution. So, through the specially prepared interactive solution featured at the demo and video stations, we hope to inspire and give you fresh perspective on cash management, enabling you to reshape your cash management journey. And we also have prepared little gift to you all embark on your journey across the various booths. So please remember to scan your QR codes to receive the DBS gift. Our staff stationed at the back of the ballroom will lead you into the exhibition area. Again, thank you. So a gentle reminder that we also appreciate if you can take a few minutes to complete the post-event survey on the pigeonhole before you leave the event on your table there. So you can cross the survey via the same pigeonhole link as mentioned previously. So ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the DBS Reshaping Cash Management event. So thank you again for joining us today. My name is Tommy Chokro, and we wish you a wonderful afternoon. And for now, please enjoy your lunch. Thank you.